What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I am, of course, your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rexx Ruger. That, if you couldn't tell by the enormous front teeth, is the Freddie Mercury puppet, my silent partner, always watching my back. This, of course, is the only place where the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. That's right. I got the rockstar genetics. I'm going to give myself a look just to confirm what I already know, that I am looking great. Don't hate, congratulate. It's not my fault. I got the genes and you don't. But you can step up your game quite a bit with a little bit of this stuff. Add to the hole in the ozone layer and get your quaff in order. You won't look this good because I am, again, the offspring of a rock star, but you will step up your game quite a bit. My guest is here. I'm going to shut up. I'm excited about tonight's episode, man. Really excited. This is a big deal for me. A big deal. I was just saying in my little preamble, man, that this is a real big deal for me, Mr. ALAIN Johannes. A big deal for me.
Thanks, buddy. How you doing?
Just a massive deal. I had to run upstairs. I had to put on my David Lee Roth Jr. get up here because it is my shtick. It is how I stand out from the multitude of other podcasters out there. So I got to be the delusion. I got to be the delusional 51-year-old guy that comes on here and cops to being David Lee Roth Jr.
I love it. I love it.
You got to set yourself. You got to set yourself apart. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I do this myself. I try to look. Got a poncho on. You know what I'm saying? With a hoodie. Good to go.
I'm curious, man, when I look at your resume, and it's an amazing resume, man, but some of the instruments that you play, I didn't even fucking know existed. I had to look some of these things up. What instrument do you actually identify with the most? If someone had a gun to your head and said, what are you and what are you most proficient at?
I mean, I think, it's obviously the one that started. I was like 4 years old, started like playing guitar, like an island string, graduated to an acoustic, then electric when I was around maybe 8, 9,
Okay.
But just my love, my affinity and love for all things music got me into listening to music from other cultures and other time periods and they, other instruments because, Indian classical, Persian classical. So all these sounds just really captivated me. Jazz, obviously, horns, flutes. It just, Baroque music, like it just captivated me. And so I became kind of like this slightly obsessive with texture and sound, And right. So I had to have a go myself. And these things I heard in my head, some of them, sometimes it influenced the way that I play guitar by trying to emulate like a voice or a flute or a banzuri or a violin. And then other times I was just like, man, I'd love to try the real thing. And so I would just start collecting throughout the years on tour, grab something, figure out a way to get it home because very often these things are quite fragile,
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like 11 AD, the old home studio, at some point we had like 200-300 instruments lying around, and
wow.
Yeah, and there's some of them are still around and they're in storage, and it's really hard for me to be away from them. I get like I start to miss like because obviously like you have to play them every day, and I don't pretend or profess to try to be like a master at them, just to be able to communicate an idea musically and something that I'm feeling through the instrument. So I sometimes I would do the rounds of like playing each instrument 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, you know what I mean? Every day. And so I miss some of that stuff. So now they've been hanging out here down in Chile. I started a new collection because it's too hard to get all that stuff. I don't even know where I'm going to end up, but to travel, to set all that stuff somewhere, it's like a container on a boat, and that's expensive. So I don't know where I'm going to be yet. So I already have like an alto and a harmonium and a trumpet and a flute, just while I'm hanging out.
So you're starting to amass a new collection.
Apparently, yeah. I mean, they're not like particularly expensive, but I just love it. Plus, I think they look badass, like in the room. You know what I mean? Like laid out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now, because like I said, you do have such a great resume and work with such an eclectic group of people. If I go back to the beginning for you, was there a particular album or an artist or a song that really lit the fire for you to do music when you go back to your earliest years? Like, what lit the fire for you?
Well, I would say my first memories are of the Beatles, because I was born in '62. So by the time I was pretty conscious at 2 or 3 years old, and the Beatles were ringing out everywhere. And I think it was "Love Me Do" was the first one. "Hard Day's Night," from the, all that music, and I would already start to, instead of wanting toys, I just wanted vinyl.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and then my grandmother was really into like Frank Sinatra, and then she would play some Charlie Parker, and then my folks always had interesting friends that would suddenly say, "Hey, have you heard Paco de Lucia?" When I was just a little kid, Imagine being like 8 years old and you hear flamenco guitar, especially Paco, the great master. And so I was very fortunate to be around all this stuff. And then my Uncle Peter, who was a pretty big star down here in Chile, he was always, when he would come hang out with us, he would always bring, wanted to rehearse his band. So there was access to all this stuff,
Right.
The band would set up in the living room, and they were mostly partying and left the stuff alone. So I could get in there, like, as a little kid, basically, 8, 9, 10, and trying drums and trying his trumpet, his flute, like a Fender Rhodes. Yeah. So, it was, those were early memories, were being in a household full of, not necessarily musos, but entertainers,
Right.
And the bohemian side. So they were up all night listening to music and jamming and partying, and that's also kind of like, in a way, kind of got me away from attempting to have that exact lifestyle myself, in terms of the self-abuse.
Yeah.
I managed to just be like, I like to drink, I like to drink here and there, and much less so lately. But anyway, yeah, it was just that environment. It was all the stuff in the '60s, that was playing around. Obviously, like when I was, again, 8, 9, 10, I started to hear like Sabbath and Hendrix and Zeppelin. And then when I moved to the States in '74, I became kind of obsessed with Queen,
Oh yeah.
And there was Bowie, and there was all that stuff, and all my buddies were into Kiss, and it was exciting, because that was ruling the day. Rock was ruling the day back then. So,
I think people would be curious, because you are seen as someone that's so prolific from a creative standpoint. But talking to musicians on here, it seems like people have many different approaches to creativity. I get a lot of people that say they get ideas or sparks of creativity in the car, oddly enough, and they're humming stuff into a phone, or they're jotting stuff down, or maybe at their day job, or then you have the people that are disciplined, that can just go into a room and say, "I'm going to lock myself in here and I'm going to create." Well, what's the process like for you when you're going to do new music?
I think it's. Well, what's happened is that it probably has developed over a period of time. It used to be very much like, when I was young, I would practice and play a lot, in the bedroom, but almost not in a focused way. I would just have the guitar in my hand,
and
like be noodling while watching TV. Sometimes noodling along to records. Then, Hello Slovak, Jack Harris and I grew up together playing since we were like 14 years old. So we had Jack's bedroom. His parents was really cool. So we'd go after school and like make noise as a trio in junior high, up until, our first bands already. And that was an amazing gift to be able to have that, But yeah, I mean, that kind of life of like, playing all the time, and just having it be constantly my happy place, as it were,
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where, because of all the decades I've passed, it's literally just always running in my head. And like the last few records I've done, I've literally just improvised, in a sense, meaning like I didn't have any songs ready when I started to record them. I just trusted that I would be given the information, and the melodies would come, and I would take that and be able to organize it and turn it into a song, and be inspired in the moment. Like my last album, Hum, I did in 12 days, including writing it,
I think people would be amazed. I think people would be amazed to hear that. I mean, I don't know if that's the timeline for everybody, but 12 days seems remarkable.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like I don't pretend that it's like the best version of the song or anything, but I just really like the energy. Like I didn't chew anything or try to develop it into like a better place. I just love the visceral feeling of the first, the first moment of inspiration, and the way that I look at it, it's like music is always playing, so, in wherever that is, and then I think we prepare our entire lives to be able to receive this transmission. A lot of people will say something similar, that they don't feel like they own it or it's theirs,
Right.
I just kind of tune into it and prepared myself over many years to be able to translate it and communicate through that a human experience, my particular experience, and and it's like lately that I've just been like I'm ready to start a new solo record, and I literally don't have a single note. But in a way, there is a little bit of a sketch pad on Instagram where I do a lot of improvising, and I save all these videos, and then sometimes I take off from whatever I did. It's either the feeling of it, sometimes specifically something I played that sounds like a song fragment to me, So lately, I mean, this last my 3 solo records and definitely the next one have been in that kind of way, like very much spontaneously being created as the process goes,
And you still like the format of releasing an LP? Because obviously, and I think we've even seen this trend more since COVID, a lot of singles, a lot of EPs. It almost seems like the attention span, well, not seems like, it has. The attention span of people has dwindled. People don't immerse themselves in a full record as much as they used to anymore. Does it still make sense to release an LP?
I think it does. I mean, maybe it's only because I grew up with that concept,
Yeah.
And I really like the way that that it encapsulates a certain feeling. So when I think of my favorite records, I can play them in my head, and they have a feel to them. They have a sound to them. They're kind of wrapped in this kind of conceptual. And what it gives me, like physical graffiti, like is a thing in my mind. Like,
right.
Like the first time I played it, and the way the album cover looks and how it feels, and I remember sitting, laying in bed and looking at the Swan Song label, with the Icarus and and it just has this amazing feeling. So to me, it's like it's like an oeuvre, it's like a work, like a book, or like a poet, like a poetry collection or whatever. To me, I still like that idea. I mean, I really like the idea, separate things coming out here and there. Like I might release, like I put out like some of the B-sides from Spark, and that conceptually it's the songs that didn't end up on Spark that were inspired around the same time, or like a Christmas song, or I did there's Rush Farewell to Kings 20th anniversary or 40th anniversary reissue, and I ended up doing madrigals on that, and little things that are just one or two songs that are for something. Like Chris Costa and I just did a Aqualung for the Aqualung Redux. We did it a cappella.
Yep.
Things like that. And maybe I've done EPs before too, like little spurts, but I still like it to be kind of wrapped up in a thing. I understand maximizing the promotion of a song and like putting out singles that the album in little sections, but it's almost like, to me, it would seem like an incomplete picture, which is cool too, like a teaser, like just this much of the image, and you don't really know what the rest is,
right
until you get the whole album. Because I mean, I know that people don't sit down and quietly listen to and let a whole album wash over them, but all of us grew up, for a certain generation, we grew up with that kind of idea, and it's something that doesn't happen. At least I don't think it does. Maybe not as much as they used to. And I'd love to think that it does. You remember when we were like growing up and there was a getting together and playing each
Sure.
other.
I'm 51 years old. Yeah, I very much
Yeah.
remember like listening to a full album. You just come home from school and put headphones on and drop a needle and you just go for the
Yeah.
whole experience.
It's the whole thing, and then you get together with your friends because everybody kind of decided to buy different records so you didn't double up, and and then you could make sets for each other.
Yep.
But having the listening party, wait till I play this for my friends, and they play me
Sure.
something in this cover, and that that was such a beautiful thing to do, and it's a little more with technology, it's a little more like now every individual has his the relationship, but it's still beautiful. People are listening to a lot of music, and there's a lot of great stuff always coming out and things to discover. Just easier to discover now. I remember having to wait for 6 months for some import from Japan to come.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad you brought technology though, because you are somebody that amongst your musical credits, you've done a lot of producing, engineering, mixing, and I picked up on something that you said earlier, like about like using like a visceral take on your albums and not diving too much into getting the most perfect version. With all this technology, have we gotten kind of spoiled with rock and roll, where every take and everything that we see, we want to see it be perfect? Obviously, we see a lot of live artists now getting the shit beat out of them on YouTube, where people are taking videos and look, they don't have it anymore. Look, they shouldn't be up there no more. They can't, which is kind of a lazy comparison, saying somebody can't do something from 40 years ago and still do it the same way nowadays. I mean, that's hard to do for anybody. But I don't know,
Exactly.
has technology kind of spoiled us, where we want our music perfect now?
I mean, because when back in the analog days, if you wanted, it was impossible really to. I mean, you could slice tape,
Right.
But to like quantize and pitch things, people were flying in, flying like a chorus vocally, where you submix it, you do like a stereo mix and you fly it off to another reel to reel, and then just like line it up and punch it in a way, to kind of like, if you wanted to get lazy about it, you don't have to do like 89 voices on each chorus, to get there. And that was kind of like just being really creative with it. But I think like, I try to encourage, unless people really want to like play to a click and grid everything and tune things, I'm not happy doing it. I have done it a couple of times, but it's not natural for me, because I think, first of all, the more gridded something is, the more it shrinks. The reason why an orchestra sounds massive is because everyone's slightly off from each other, intonation and rhythmically, tonally, right? So when you play like a string sample, it's kind of sounds like strings, but it doesn't have this hugeness,
Right.
And so by the same token, like, if certain bands of their groove, like if imagine like gridding Led Zeppelin, for example.
Right.
I mean, if everything was exactly in the beat, it would suddenly not be. It wouldn't be them. It wouldn't sound like them. I think it's. I don't know why there's a demand for that, but when people go see bands live, I think that they get this amazing feeling of real, human beings in front of them. And I think now with AI, rearing its head, coming in, a lot of, I think that feeling of like experiencing real. The reality of human beings in front of you performing something in the moment, all raw and visceral and passionate, is going to be something pretty valuable.
Yeah.
At least I'm hoping so, because we've all been to concerts where we just just getting chills just thinking about being there. Like this. I think because the tools are there. It has made it so that some people kind of cut a bit of corners instead of like having to do more takes, and get the vocal part, right. And by right, I don't mean like, perfect. It doesn't have to be. That's the other thing, is like some singers have a natural way of tonally pitching, like, like Rod Stewart, slightly sharp, something, but it gives them the character and the way that, singers have this personality and this feeling and this connection, human connection, like the howling, the moaning, all that stuff, that when something's going,
Right.
But of course, there's music that has it that sounds great like that, like some of the hip hop and it's just that sound, they're using autotune in an extreme way. Just it's just not my world, you know, and I can recognize that there's artistry there, but it's, you know, it doesn't really move me the same way when I listen to it as opposed to, like, you know, old blues recordings or Indian classical ragas or rock bands that I love, or, you know.
Is it hard for you to find new stuff to listen to? Like, what are your listening tendencies like? Like, for a while, I was kind of that curmudgeonly, stodgy old fuck that would just listen to the stuff that I was comfortable with, and I wouldn't expand my horizons and explore the streaming platforms and look for new music. Certainly, the podcast has helped me broaden my horizons a little bit and come out of my comfort zone. But when you're going to listen from a fan standpoint, just you know, around the house or whatever, what's your tendency like? Are you able to find new music that excites you?
Yeah. I mean, the last few years, you know, on Mortal Orchestra, you know, Ruben Nilsson's a genius, and I love, you know, even though, you know, Radiohead's quite known, but The Smile, you know, that other project that Tom and Johnny have with that I forgot, I think the drummer's name is Tom too. Is really cool. There's a new band called Father of Peace, which I love. It's just, you know, it's kind of like really cool, like. Has a bit of that OG pop kind of sensibility, but they're like this trio. And I find things all the time. There's obviously, I get lucky because I work with so many cool bands from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And I just end up, you know, being sent this music and I have a resonance with it, and we end up working together. Like this year, I've worked with, you know, six bands from different, you know, Portuguese and Spanish, and right now I'm working with a Chilean band, and it's a really cool thing. So I'm constantly kind of down in the trenches, as it were, like seeing all this stuff come up, and people naturally, like, you know, and possibly so, because everyone understands that trying to be a musician, especially like a rock musician or have a rock band right now, it's not exactly it was already like irresponsibly crazy thing to do when we were growing up. But now it's even more so, like, because thanks to Spotify and streaming and people feeling entitled to just listen to your music for nothing. But anyway, there's great stuff everywhere, man. And imagine, like, how many things I missed. Like, somebody says, "Have you heard Peruvian acid rock from '67 to '69?" Like, oh, like, I had no idea this shit was happening.
You can't find it all, right? I mean, you know?
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about YouTube. That's one thing about technology, or like, you know, social media. Like, all these things are bubbling up. You know, suddenly you realize, like, you know, humans are amazing. Like, there's like this morphic field where, like, these little things bubble up around the same time, or maybe they, you know, they inspire each other. You know, and show up. Like, I was just listening to my Vision Orchestra earlier, which was one of my big things when I was growing up. Because I love jazz and I love rock, and suddenly there was this music that was kind of jazzy and improvisational, but it was also scary, like rock, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not talking about like super clinical fusion, you know, which there's some interesting stuff too. But I'm talking about like kind of slightly out of tune and slightly, like, you know, just this sounds scary, you know, even to musicians, you know. It's like even to most musicians, they're like, "Whoa, what's that?" You know. I had a few records that I would, you know, when you have a party and people won't go home.
I
had a couple of those, like,
the exact reason why I don't have parties.
Well, extra avant-garde kind of, like, you know, improvisational, noisy stuff that I would put on and get everyone to go home. You're like blasting, you know, like, all right, I'm out. Like, we're out of cheese and wine. Bye.
Yeah, you know. I guess Alan wants us to leave now. Now, there's no way in hell that I could go name by name and touch on every amazing collaboration that you've done, man. But there's a couple that really stand out because they mean a lot to me, and I just want to get your take on what it was like to create with them. One guy who means a ton to me, so much so that I even convinced my wife to let me hang a poster of him in our bedroom next to my room, is Mark Lanegan, the late great Mark Lanegan.
Oh my God!
One of my favorite, just one of my favorite fucking, not even musician, just people of all time. I've been through the audio book a million times. I've studied it like the fucking Torah. I know everything about Mark Lanegan, man. But what was it like? I mean, you know, there's so little about him. I mean, I guess after he wrote his memoir, there's quite a bit out there about him. But not too many people have really divulged much that I've been able to talk to of working with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I was a fan from a distance,
Yep.
and when I first met him, I went to the Rancho La Luna to do the Desert Session 7 and 8, and Josh is standing there, and he goes, "Hey, I want you to meet Mark Lanegan," and I turn around, and I don't see anyone in the room, and then he goes, "Mark Lanegan," and I look back, and then in the door frame leading to the other room, I see half a face, like an eye looking at me, and I hear this voice go, "Hey, bro," and I just met, and immediately, like we were recording Hanging Tree, and I was conducting him because I wrote the song, and it was in 5,
Right.
and this is the original version before the Songs for the Deaf version. And then it would just like, he was so mysterious and kind of quiet, but he had this aura about him, and obviously, like, he could come off a little bit like you people were scared to approach. It was maybe a little grumpy or whatever.
Very. It sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah, but then when you get to know him, like he called me like a week after that. He goes, "Hey, I got a good feeling that you and I could do some stuff really fast." So he came over and we did a cover of a Kink song, but we did it in a kind of like a gothic hillbilly blues way. I played harmonium and cigar box, and it's quite amazing. That was like in 2001. It was one of the earliest things we ever did. And obviously we had this crazy relationship where, like, on Bubblegum, like, there's 4 songs that it was just him and I. So I would be his band, basically.
Yep.
And then starting to work on his albums from Blues Funeral on. And, he had this amazing, like, first of all, one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life, a deep, deep intelligence, a deep sense of humor, unexpected, the kind of humor where like, it's a master.
Yeah.
It's
a little ride.
Yeah, it's like a philosopher's view of the world where the twist comes, and it's so unexpected and deep that you just taken aback. And it was voracious with his art. He loved books and poetry and encyclopedic knowledge of music, like things. I mean, he would sometimes send me like a folder with like 300 songs to start absorbing. For the next record that we were going to do, in terms of like some of the textures and the feelings and the vibes that he liked, that he thought would be great for the next batch of songs. And I was like, where did he find these things? I mean, obviously there was like, the things that were like the quad rock and the, electronic, but there were such obscure things that people that think they know, obscure, they were like, where'd that come from?
Yeah.
And he loved to, you got to check out this movie and that movie, and so he was always like a fountain of he looked for inspiration everywhere.
Yeah.
And he was a bon vivant. He loved to eat good food. I mean, he walked fast and kind of angled, and it he would get grumpy sometimes, but he. With him and I, he knew, like, he just had to kind of corral me into doing like what he heard in his mind,
Right.
And he didn't want to be in the studio very long. So if it was 3 hours into us trying to find what the song wanted to be in terms of the sounds and the performances, he was already getting a little bit like, so I got really, really fast at like just reading him. He didn't have to, say it verbatim. He just had to kind of look at me a certain way, and I just kind of almost telepathically sensed what he was talking about. And it was my job to like record the bed of the song so that he would feel comfortable, like, and good about singing it.
Yeah.
So you could get like 2 or 3 takes, and then we'd comp the vocal, and it'd be like, cool, all right, see you tomorrow, and he'd leave. So get there by 10, home by 1:30 or 2. That was his favorite moment. And then you go, okay, we got to get Aldo on this. We got to get Duke on this. We got to call Julie to sing on this. And then we kind of add the textures on top, and you get Jack Ayers to play drums with it, and that was
funny. It's funny because very often he seemed very critical and a little self-effacing in his own opinion of his talent, which always kind of was a little bit strange, because he is revered as so talented. But and I guess maybe when I say that, I'm kind of referring to I think a lot of his early stuff, like early Screaming Trees and stuff like that. But he didn't seem to look back on a lot of his career with he seemed to not really like appreciate like the work that he had put out there, or kind of like kind of undermined it a little bit in his own. Maybe he's just being very self-critical.
Yeah, I think because he was very actually at the end of the day, as sure as he was about the art he was making, he was also quite humble about it. He didn't,
Yeah.
in his mind, he was just like taking from other places and just combining it, or like even like the word like stealing, but unofficially meaning like inspiration or whatever. But um, he was just so incredible. I don't think he. I don't know. It just I find this in quite a few amazing people that have been around, that are the higher level genius, the
Right.
more humble they tend to be, or realize that or maybe they realize the ego trappings of believing that limit you, because suddenly you're already working at the highest possible level as being this fucking genius, right? So where do you have to go? That it's a process. So you can't possibly, you know, how can you start from already the greatest, or
Right.
such a badass? So I think with each album he wanted to explore another side or whatever, and that's why I thought it was so interesting. Like there was a bit of, obviously always a bit of a resistance, like that Mark was, he'd be sitting there using this Funkbox app on his iPhone, coming up with beats, like this little drum machine
Yeah.
that has basically all the drum machines sampled in there, and you could do beats, and so he just embraced all that, and like for example, like Ocho Sad Disco, right? It's this it starts, and it's got this kind of like disco synthy, almost new wave-ish kind of feel, and then his voice comes in,
Right. Right.
that voice. See,
Yeah.
you could hang his voice centered, whatever the thing was happening, whatever it was, it didn't matter. You could, it could be like a polka, with it doesn't matter.
Yeah. A lot of
His
grit and a
voice,
lot of weight. A lot of grit and weight to that voice.
exactly. And
Yeah.
suddenly, like, there was a center and a focus, and the story came forth, from his lyrics, and I was extremely blessed and privileged to be sitting right next to him, because he liked to sing in the control room, and he liked to hold the mic as he was singing it with headphones on, and he had his lyrics in his hand, and he was right next to me. So I was just like,
And
and
where
I
are you? And where are you in 2022? Like when you get the news of his untimely passing, and how did you process it? How do you process like loss like that? I mean,
I
does it come
mean,
out? I mean, does it come out creatively with you? Do you kind of
well,
you become introverted? Do you use it as a source of creativity?
well, I have to admit that it was almost too much, because of what it was built. It was stacking on top of, losing. First of all, Natasha was
Sure.
my soulmate, love of my
Yep.
life. Then Chris, and then of course my parents, and really close people. My uncle, that was a big mentor to me, and then Chris, and it's just one of these, like. Uh, I didn't expect it, even though there was a period when he was in the coma, that then we were all, dreading what would happen. Like, we didn't, is he going to make it, or what, then he wakes up from his coma, and I thought he was scot free, or home free. You know what I mean? It's like he survived that, 5 weeks. And it was really shocking. I was actually at my stepson's wedding, and I didn't look at my phone for, you know, 20 minutes, and suddenly I see missed calls from Josh, Greg Dooley,
Yep.
and Greg Workman from Ipecac, and I knew, those three
Yeah.
people missing calls from them, as I said. I think Rich as well. Um, and it was just shocking to me. We were actually planning uh, in July of that year to meet up in Lisbon and start the next record,
Yeah.
because he wanted ultimately he was heading towards moving to Portugal when he stopped in Ireland for a
Yep.
bit, um and we had a really, really beautiful connection with the place. There's a band called Dead Combo that I produced, that he guested on, and then we went and played a concert with them, and there's an amazing talent pool of talent in Portugal, you know, and they're really amazing musicians and artists and people, and it's a beautiful place to hang out, and it's not expensive and very bohemian. So that was kind of our dream, you know. That was what we were planning. So, you know, I gotten used to, like, you know, making a record with Mark every couple of years,
Right.
and I mean, he was still so young, and you know, it was just so unexpected, you know, just, you know, being in that COVID coma, like, that just, I can only imagine how much it took out of him, you know. But
well,
yeah,
because you've collaborated with all these great people, and collaboration has been, you know, obviously, you know, a large part of your career. Is there anybody that you could kind of shout out where it's been just, and maybe it's happened with multiple people, where it's just been just a happy marriage, where it was just like it was meant to be, you know, the collaboration process was just smooth?
yeah, I think I've been lucky in the sense that they've all been like that, you know.
Yeah.
Not necessarily smooth, but sometimes some people's process is a little bit less smooth, but
Right.
not because it's just everybody works differently. Some people end up in a very intense emotional state when they're creating.
Right.
I myself, I like to feel good, you know. I like to have fun. And I think a lot, like for example, Euphoria Morning, like Natasha, Chris, and I made that record over 7
Beautiful.
months.
Yeah.
And we were literally just like hanging out, three buddies hanging out, like, you know, watching movies, you know, cooking, going out to dinner, you know, much to Natasha's, like, you know, she would like roll eyes at us, like, you know, getting guitar tones for like 6 hours, you know.
Yeah.
She'd be like, he goes, "You guys had it in the beginning. What do you mean now what's this now?" Well, now this is the Strat with the other wah into
Yeah.
the Vox, but also splitting it out the, you know. And she's like, "Just record the damn part," or, you know. But of course, there was no pressure. That we weren't in a studio that would cost money, you know. We were a home studio. So that was a really, really amazing period, you know, that making that album. And I had friends come by. Let's get Jason Faulkner to come in and play some bass. Hey, you know, Vic and Drees is there. You know, come in. Bill Reefer's going to come. Matt Cameron's going to come. You know, it's just like how cool is that? You know. Yeah, I think I've been really lucky. I mean, you know, being part of Queens of the Stone Age for all those years, that was an amazing time for two, you know, obviously, like, you know, lifelong friends, meeting PJ Harvey through in Desert Sessions and being part of that band too, the Hope Six band, and making that record, you know, meeting Mick Harvey there and everyone that I met at that time, John Parrish and the entire James Johnston and Terry Edwards and the entire band.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they become lifelong friends. Like, I just played in Seattle, and they happened to be in town. So the entire PJ Harvey, you know, all the band came to see me, and then they invited me to join them for the encores, and it's just like, it's amazing. You know, I really thank Josh for a lot of this, you know, connecting me. Like, you know, we ended up on Interscope. We were on A&M 11 and it was a disaster because I knew they weren't going to promote us, you know, and A&M was going to, but they asked us to put out the record that we'd done before Euphoria Morning, to wait till after the cycle with Chris to put it out, and in the interim they got folded into, became Universal, you know. But the good thing about that was meeting Queens, you know. So
yeah, an amazing band. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we were, you know, we opened up for them as Rated R had just come out, and Josh asked me to record some B-sides. We went to Sound City, and then he said, "Come to Desert Sessions," and that whole thing started. You know, meeting Mark and obviously being part of Songs for the Deaf and Lullabies, and mixing and recording Era Vulgaris, and, you know, I mean, I basically had to step away because Natasha got sick.
Yeah. Yep.
But you know, to this day, like, Josh was responsible for bringing me to Chile after 46 years to meet my real father. You know, so I got a few years with him. You know, so Josh has always been like looking out for me, which is awesome.
So where do you divide your time in between? Like, currently you're joining us from Chile. You know, are there points in time throughout the year, like, where you live there and live in the States, or is the States not even in the equation anymore?
Well, I mean, you know, I'm moved out of the house at the Tucson. I lived there for all those years, in 2017, right? And I went to stay with my sister out in Woodland Hills for a few years, and then I wasn't going to stay as long as I did, but the pandemic hit, and then I've been coming to Chile since 2010, almost every year. I have an amazing band here, my trio.
Yep.
With Cote and Filafonsea, and I've got my paternal side of the family, so I've got two brothers and cousins and aunts and their husbands and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends and kids, and it's like we get together. It's like 30 of us. It's amazing.
So Chile is home. You identified it more as home.
I mean, it has become. Obviously, I was missing. I was gone for all. Grew up in the States, but I basically come here every year for a few weeks to perform. But now I stay a little longer. I'm like in the outskirts of Santiago, this little kind of countryside, kind of next to a river, and there's fruit trees. And I'm kind of late in my 62-year-old, gonna be 63 soon age. It's funny. I kind of like to be around like pastoral settings and water,
more solitude.
More solitude. And I got my studio. I can make a record in, and So I mean, part of me wants to eventually. I'm still not sure where I'm going to land, but definitely this is one of the places. Then I go stay with my sister, and I've been trying to figure out maybe get a little place in the desert out in Joshua Tree,
Yeah.
But then there's Spain and there's Portugal. That's a beautiful. Right now, I think this is good for me for right now. I'm here. I had to come home early. I was very upset, with my health. I had to come take care of some things, and I couldn't join everyone for the celebration in London for Mark Lanegan.
Yeah.
Which was, really upsetting, but I couldn't have done it. So I came back in the middle of November, and I'm here till late March, taking care of some things.
Well, I got stuff I want to talk to you about, man. But one more thing on Mark Lanegan. One thing that I saw him say in an interview on Joseph Arthur's podcast was he brought up, and maybe you can expound on this more, having played both markets. When it got later in Mark's career, to post Screaming Trees in his solo career, he made mention on there of playing in Europe. And then his career getting to the point where it only makes sense to play in Europe, where the only place he was really economically viable. Why do you think American audiences and American fans, which does kind of suck for some of us American fans because we don't get the opportunity to see him live, how does that happen, and why does that happen to somebody at that juncture in their career where Europe seems to get what he does and American audiences do not?
I mean, I think it's a little. I mean, it's almost true, but then there's other factors. Imagine the size of Europe, right?
Right.
And the concentration. So if you go to Belgium, the rock fans, of the history that know Lanegan are going to show up, right?
Right.
And then they're going to go to Brussels or Antwerp, and he's going to play there, and there's going to be like between 3,000-5,000, whatever it is,
Right.
In the States, and it just happened to me because I just did some touring. It's so big and so spread out, that the distances are so great. So the cost of the moving and touring around, the fans are there. He has tremendous fans all over the States.
Right. Right.
But imagine like there's 100 of you in your area, So then he plays a club, and it's 100 people, 200 people, and sometimes to get there, so it becomes a little more difficult. It takes longer. It's a little more expensive.
Okay.
But I mean, I think it's that I really think that there's just I mean, how many of us in the States is like are we 400 million yet or
we got to
right?
be. Yeah.
So imagine like Chile is 25 million altogether, I think, tops, or 20, and other countries in Europe it's this massive place, and I think that has, to me, that makes sense to me, because I know that there's fans of Mark Lanegan in the States, and passionate fans, and it must be very frustrating, that he didn't tour. I mean, he did tour, but maybe not as much as other places. You can drive between between Paris and London and this entire the next day you're already in a different country,
Right,
in a different
right,
place,
right.
you know.
Yeah,
Imagine doing that, like
I
LA to
know.
New York. Like, how long does that take, you know?
I
like
can't
like
even,
like
yeah, I can't even go from one end. I mean, it would take 4 or 5 hours to go from one end of New York State where I live to the other end. You know,
I
I
know
mean,
exactly. So imagine, like you know, North Carolina, and then New York, and then you know, I don't know, let's say Boston, or like it takes, like, I just did it. I was driving like 8-9 hours, you know,
yeah,
the day of
yeah,
the show. You know,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. That's
um,
correct.
you know, but you know, having said that, obviously, you know, he and there's certain places where there was more close. Obviously, Seattle, New York, you know, Philly, places where there would be more concentration of the audiences of the kind of music that we're talking about, you know.
Yeah,
Or obviously we're talking about, it's very expensive, but um no, I mean, I got lucky. I just did some touring, and there was always, you know, between 150, 200, 250, you know. And that's for me, that's I love the intimacy of those shows. um and you know, but I'm touring solo too, you know, like
right,
just
right,
literally just me and an
right,
acoustic, you know.
right, right, right.
Mark wanted to have his band, you know. He did it more often in Europe, or he'd take Shelly and Jeff out, like to, you know, to do some of the other shows.
Now, you know, because you work with so many great people, I'm wondering, well, including in them Crooked Vultures. I mean, you're working with the legendary John Paul Jones, but have there been times when you've gotten the chance to rub elbows or meet somebody, and even you've been blown away, like, wow, I can't believe I just got to meet that person? I mean,
I would have to say, I mean, obviously, John Paul Jones is a massive one.
yeah,
Because Josh invited me to be part of the, you know, of the recording process, you know, engineering, and then recording some of the songs, and then asked me to be part of the band live. Um, you know, because originally it was a 3-piece, so that would, you know, so people go, why is now in the photos? Well, every single Crooked Vulture show had me on stage, you know, but that
right,
was after, you know. Um, but even even with John Paul Jones, like, you know, I mean, it's just incredible, because he's just like such a legendary genius musician and producer, and such an amazing guy. And we, you know, he would take these, Al, come on, there's like a old time bluegrass jam over at Bella Flex house, and or you got, Al, there's a ancient instrument museum exhibit, you know, instrument exhibit, and this amazing thing. Are you kidding me? But before my love for Led Zeppelin was my love for the Beatles, and I was on stage at the Royal Albert Hall with Crooked Vultures, and Ali, my tech, hands me the guitar. He goes, "I don't want to make you nervous, Al, but Sir Paul is next to me, and he's watching you like a hawk." So
that's
I'm like,
intimidating. That's
I
intimidating.
proceeded to almost, you know, almost fucking just lose it, and then I
Yeah,
didn't, and then after the show, he was super sweet, and we did tequila shots, and you know, it's like, that's pretty awesome. And
yeah.
and I was really, he was amazing. He was just he's incredible. But that was because it's such an early imprint, you know. I never got to meet Bowie. I would have been completely losing it
Yeah.
there too, you know.
So for you, what's the recipe? Let's put it that way, for a great song. For you, what comes first? A title, a riff, a line? How do you construct a great song?
You know, I think it's so many different ways. It could, you know, because I kind of think of it as just existing already, and so whichever bit of it shows up first. A title can be a line of a lyric, you know, that can come to your mind, that kind of like implies or infers what is to be, or like a sexy groove, or like a bass line. You know, it could start from anything really, you know.
Right.
Um, um, Almost like, or like a pulse, like a rhythm that kind of dictates what a great riff would be over this. And then once the riff is existing, then the melody that sits on top of it kind of comes forth from that feeling, you know. That it really isn't, but lyrically it's pretty funny, because at least with, in terms of 11, we were so into the music part of it that the lyric was literally the last thing, because in a sense we kind of waited to get the full effect of what the song was communicating non-verbally,
Right.
the
Right.
feeling, for the words to come. So famously, Natasha and I, with all the vocals you hear on 11 records, we're literally reading the lyrics because we just wrote them. So we're interpreting in a way like just reading what because we hadn't memorized it. It's not like some people like you memorize the lyrics, but I think it's pretty common. Like you just wrote them, and like especially with the lead singer gets all the pressure, like they end up having like 1 or 2 days to do all the vocals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, did you get the lyrics together? And then sometimes the do the dada ends up being part of the lyric because that's what it is, and you tell yourself that's the best way. No, but I think it's an interesting question because I find that it could be anything. There's like I said, it's almost like it's unveiling itself, and it could be any part of the puzzle that you see first. And I guess the more pieces you have in the beginning, the more kind of dictates or leads you to what the rest of it is going to be. Like at least that's the way that I kind of ends up happening to me. Like, but I think it's really really fascinating because there's no one way.
Right.
It could be
Right.
anything.
Right. There's not a tried and true formula. Could be different for every song. Could be different. And so what's it like? I'm a married guy. I've been married for 26 years. But you had the opportunity, rest in peace to Natasha, but you did create music with her. What's the dynamic like when you're, whether you're with somebody on a romantic level and creating with them? Because not a lot of people can really expound on that. I mean, Paul McCartney and his wife Linda made music together. There have been, Sonny and Cher. I mean, there have been couples out there that have been able to do it, man. But what's the dynamic like when you're creating? Because I being a guy married 26 years, I know better than not to say happy wife, happy life. So I don't know, do you cave in and acquiesce, to your better half, or like, what's the push and pull like when you're creating with your significant other?
Well, I mean, we had a very particular case. We were completely different in many ways. She was like a natural born genius with perfect pitch. Could saw music. Could memorize. Could hear a piece of music one time and remember exactly what everybody played. And she would compose in her head. At the same time, like, improvisation was kind of like a mystery to her. She had to work it out. And to me, it was the opposite. Like I was kind of the knucklehead. Like I was just like tuning my guitar to whatever note I was. I mean, obviously, I was fearless.
Right.
And not that she was fearless too, but in a different way. So we kind of completed each other, and we made this kind of super musician in the sense that it became really, really difficult to know who did what, and the song just kind of happened, And so people would assume that some things were harmonically more advanced, would have been Natasha, and the more like rock and riff and kind of swampy weird. But then don't forget Natasha was signed to Motown. She grew up making R&B records and stuff and listening to Aretha and but we just had this crazy like symbiosis, and we were literally around each other for those 24 25 years 24/7, except for a couple where we were kind of forced to not be I had to go on tour without her for 5 weeks, and that was the only time in all that time. But like our friends that had kids, they would start to like the kids would like call me Alan and Natasha, and Natasha was Alan and Natasha. Like everyone kind of looked at us as a thing, like
one unit.
One unit.
Yeah.
So, and I know that in the beginning was a little tricky for her because because she had perfect pitch, she had a certain kind of tonality cemented in her head that when things were sharp or flat from that, it was kind of almost painful, almost like vertigo. So when sometimes I'd play her stuff and she'd be like, oh, but it didn't take long for some kind of exchange to happen.
It almost sounds like you're speaking about her so glowingly, though. It almost makes it sound like, and correct me if I'm wrong if you're not saying this, but it sounds like you're saying that she made you a better musician.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean, I Euphoria Morning would, I mean, it was Chris, Natasha, and I, but Natasha did a lot of reharmonizing and arranging, and Chris admired her tremendously, and I think people don't really realize the depth of her musicianship.
Yeah.
Like if I say she's the best musician I ever met, and I ever had the pleasure of being with, I don't just mean, oh, he loves his wife and he misses her and he's being really nice.
Right.
No. I mean. Right. Like there's musicians and then there's Natasha. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not it. You have to be around it all the time to realize this. I think even listening to the music, I mean, I'm really proud of 11 and all the stuff that we did. But it's like, but another thing, people obviously can see was the intensity with what she performed and which she lived and breathed music. It was, don't forget that she basically denounced her Soviet citizenship when she was 15 years old,
Yeah.
And that meant two things. Either they're going to let you go if you have some sponsorship, or you're going to end up in jail the rest of your life.
Right.
Being an enemy of the people,
Yeah.
So she was sure.
Yeah.
She was sure rock and roll was everything for her, rock and roll and R&B and that she said, I'm going to get signed to Motown, and everyone laughed at her. But guess what? She did it.
Yeah.
No, that's incredible. And I carry that with me, in a sense. I carry Chris and Mark too, like all the things that I was, all the music that I was blessed to be a part of, like it's almost like a charge. I'm charged with continuing in whatever way I can, humbly continuing to do that thread needs to continue. It doesn't mean the same kind of music. It just means like what I experienced with these amazing artists.
Right.
And Hollywood Forever, they're like 50 meters from each other. Just completely, like, how did that happen?
I know.
Josh was buried there, and then Chris is over here, and then Mark's over here.
And I think the crazy thing was too, is that with Chris Cornell and Mark Lanegan, I think, not that you really ever expect it, but some people, they've got drug problems, they've got crosses to bear. You're kind of not bowled over when you hear the news. But Chris and Mark were big surprises. Didn't see
big
those
surprises.
problems. Yeah.
I mean, actually, to this day, it's still hard to, like, knowing them. It's like, especially like having, spent their entire lives dealing with these forces and this darkness and the demons, and that was the entire reason. The music had this kind of self-healing component to it, so it was a huge surprise to me. And I had to kind of let it go, especially in Chris's case. I just had to, like, I couldn't.
That was a tough one. Yeah.
I couldn't have, not obsessed, but it's a mystery,
Yeah.
And it hurts, and I didn't, because that spoke to him not long before, and I just had to let it go because it was gonna consume me,
Yeah, we brought up a lot of great bands, though, from Seattle. We've talked about Mark and obviously the Screaming Trees, Chris Cornell, obviously a part of Soundgarden. So many bands came out of there and were part of that 90s, for lack of a better term, grunge scene. I know they used the term or whatever. But among the bands that got big around the 90s that people forget about, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you got a chance to work with back around 2007 was Silverchair.
Yeah.
Who I think probably would have been a lot bigger. I mean, I remember when they started, they were like 16, 17-year-old kids.
No, they were 15. I remember because we opened up for them at the Metro in Chicago.
Yeah, and Daniel Johns is such a talented kid or whatever, man. But what was it like working with them? I mean, crazy, man. I thought they were going to be huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think artistically, I mean, Daniel's, always done amazing stuff. That the young modern record that I played on. And Natasha and I, he was with Natalie and Bruley at the time, and we hung out, and he was lovely. I don't think he kind of remembered that first meeting where we were opening up for them at the Metro, and their
Yeah.
three moms were there, you know, as the managers, and they were like 15 years old, you know, like
Yeah.
you know, barely, they weren't really allowed to be like out with the adults in the club, in the theater. But no, extremely talented. You never know why, you know. Obviously, there's all kinds of amazing music has been made. It's just one of these things that, you know, what makes some bands more known than others, you know. I mean,
Right.
Screaming Trees, you know, should be more known.
I
And
agree.
then
I agree. I tell people
yeah,
that all the time. Yeah. I don't know how they didn't emerge.
yeah,
You know, and it also seems like they were kind of there at the beginning before a lot of those bands and predated a lot of them, and still kind of got missed by the boat.
yeah, exactly. And you remember Tad? You know, Tad.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, obviously, you know, there's the big four: Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam,
Nirvana. Yeah.
Nirvana, Mudhoney.
Yeah.
Mudhoney, you know, really cool.
I was a big Mother.
weird.
I was a big Mother Love Bone fan.
I love my
I love Mother Love Bone. I just had Kevin Wood on the other night. I love them.
Yeah. You know, it's with 11 too. Like we had well, 11's a little different because we were kind of tagged in with the you know, whatever that weird category of grunges, you know, which, you know, what, it was kind of lazy, but
Yeah.
we used to open up for, you know, and play with all those bands, but you know, we're quite different too. It was like but you know, it was labels not really knowing what to do. In our case, it was like there's a guy and a girl singing, and it's like it's too pop for you know, for rock, it's too metal for alternative. It's, you know, it's like. But we ended up getting our first success was on the second record with Reach Out and Crash Today, because Diana Cass from Hollywood Records saw an angle. She goes, you know, I'm going to push him to metal radio.
Yeah.
Back in '93, you know.
Yeah.
When KNAC and all the, you know, and the next thing you know, it's like Pantera and 11 were going between number 1 and number 2 spots on metal radio, and no one could believe it. What, you know? With a song like Reach Out, which is like, you know, essentially you know, more like a beatly, poppy, but heavy song. Anyway.
Now, I'm sure you've gotten the chance to see a lot of great live acts. You know, aside from playing with these people and playing on stages all over the world yourself, is there a show or two that you could talk about that you've seen from a fan standpoint that's really stuck with you or impacted you? You know, somebody that you've got a chance to see live.
Yeah, well, obviously, like we got to open up and tour with Soundgarden, you know, open up for it. So, and Pearl Jam too. Pearl Jam invited us the first year or so because we had this tour that they kind of, like, you know, quote unquote stole, not they directly, but the label. It had more power than ABBA. We were going to open up for Nirvana and the Chili Peppers right when the albums were coming, you know, the moment where it happened, 91. And then so the early Pearl Jam tours with Aberzees were incredible. Obviously, Soundgarden in the Super Unknown, down on the Upside Bad Motorfinger era that we were opening for them.
Yeah,
what was just to see that every night was just insane. I've seen Radiohead just be around OK Computer just blow my mind.
Yeah.
You know, the Swans, you know, just obliteratingly loud and amazing.
Yeah.
I've gotten to see a lot of shows. I mean, you know, 70s, I used to live off of Sunset Boulevard. I used to sneak in very often to the Roxy and the Whiskey, you know, and kind of hide in the corner and was, you know, saw Van Halen in the early days. And, you know, I mean, it's so many shows, a lot of jazz shows too. A lot of, like, I was into that whole world too. But, oh my God, like, you know, it was world music too, like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan live in '88, and the Sufi singer, Pakistani Sufi singer, you know, getting to see Shakti, which is like Indian classical fusion. There's been just some amazing shows. You know, I'm still looking forward to seeing some more stuff. Lanegan, I saw Lanegan quite a few times.
Sure.
And, you know, and you know, being, you know, opening for Queens and being in Queens at Stone Age, sometimes you're like I've seen them, you know, obviously, since I haven't been in a band for 14 years or whatever. I go see them wherever I can, and it's just I just, you know, I just love it, like hearing those songs and and you know, having your friends up there, and I love the way they're sounding these days with Theodore, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And for
So
all intents and purposes, man,
yeah,
you were, for lack of a better word, a fucking Red Hot Chili Pepper, minus Anthony Kiedis, but you were in a band with all those fellas.
yeah, it was before the Peppers. Well, Flea left us. Flea basically was our trumpet playing
Right.
jazz buddy. That you know, when our bass player decided that his grades weren't good enough to his parents were going to get mad, he quit in the 11th grade, and so Hillel and I
the late great Hillel Slovak. Yep.
yes, the late great Hillel Slovak, the first huge loss in my life, and yeah, we had a battle of the bands of Gazaris. I don't know if you've ever heard about that place, but it was kind of like next to the Roxy. It was a little bit seedier. It became the Key Club. It was a battle of the bands, and we were in it, and we had 3 months to prepare, and so Flea came over, and we showed him the bass lines, and I showed him some exercises to strengthen his hands and coordination that he still does to this day, funny enough. And he became a bass player. So that was already like in 11th, 12th grade. And then like in 81, 82, we went to see Fear, the punk band,
Yep.
and he fell in love with them and basically quit our band. It was called What Is This at the time.
So Flea quit first.
Yeah, he quit first. So
he
left.
Okay.
Yeah, so he left, and we got a bass player named Hans. And then we got a bass player named Chris Hutchinson. And so what happened is that Flea and Anthony got asked by Gary Allan, this amazing performance artist, to open up at the Grandeur Room. So they formed the Chili Peppers with Hillel and Jack, and it was two bands. We were kind of like friends that had two bands going.
Right.
So we'd share rehearsal space, and then sometimes like double bills, and then suddenly the record deals came in the same week. What Is This was got offered, but it was Hillel and Jack, Chris Hutchinson and I, and then Hillel and Jack, Anthony and Flea. We got offered record deals, and I said, dudes, I'd seen the Peppers. I knew, even though I was really proud of What Is This and great music, but I knew that in terms of like having potential for being commercial or being, I looked at it as like an easier sell or like a more obvious success possibility, because I was already used to us playing for years and making really cool, interesting psychedelic blues, funky music, and it being like, a little bit too, not artsy or whatever, but, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for us, even though we were already packing places and had so many fans, but labels were a little bit, you got to remember it's 1982, 83,
right. Right.
But surprisingly, Hillel and Jack decided to stay with me, maybe because the friendship was older, and there was an allegiance there. So Flea and Anthony got Jack Sherman and Cliff Martinez for the first record. So we went ahead and did our EP with Dave Jordan. Then when we did we're on tour, then we came back and Todd Rundgren was going to produce our long play. And in the middle of that recording, Hillel left. By that time, Natasha and I already met. And then when we came back, we did a demo recording as a trio. And then Jack left in the middle of the next recording. So now it's just Natasha and I.
Right.
So then Jack and Hillel are back in the Chili Peppers, and it's the original lineup.
Right. But I don't think anybody at the time thought that formula was going to work, though, right? I mean, like, they were just a bunch of punk kids banging around Southern California at the time. And then now look at them 40 years later, they become one of the biggest rock bands in the world.
Oh, I know, but they got to that status like the Stones. They could show up anywhere and pack the stadium.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't, it's just, I mean, funny enough with the ballad too, but obviously that original Chili Pepper lineup and feel was my favorite,
Yeah.
Because I grew up with those guys, and there was never like this feeling of like, I was really thankful that they stayed with me. And I totally understand, like, Hillel wanted to, basically could be his own man in the Peppers. Right. And the two of us were like two guitar players, and I was kind of a principal songwriter and whatever. So totally understand. So Natasha and I had a band called Walk the Moon, where it was just two of us, and we explored like songwriting. So sometimes drum machine, whatever. Then Hillel, we were making a second record as Walk the Moon, which was never released. and I get a call from Jack. I'm in England that Halal's gone. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jack has a breakdown. I have a breakdown. It's like in terms of like depression, and
Sure.
we've been having a terrible time making this record in the UK with this awful producer. And then out of the ashes of that, we formed 11. But funny enough, Jack had been asked to join then emerging Pearl Jam because Stone and Jeff, and they said, I just formed a band with my best friend from childhood and his girl. But my friend Eddie is a really good singer, and Eddie was a friend of Jack's from San Diego.
Yep.
And I think, you know, so that was one of the reasons too, like you know, we had this connection with the Pearl Jam boys, because and then eventually Jack left. You know, the third 11 record, I knew that Eddie was going to succeed in stealing Jack. You know.
Yeah.
and then funny enough, Matt Cameron became our drummer to finish out the record, and then Jack came back.
Yeah.
You know, so it's such a
Jesus,
weird.
Pearl Jam is good at stealing your drummers, man. Matt Cameron and Jack Irons.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, you know, because obviously, you know, Matt was a dear buddy, and it's like, you know, what are you gonna do with Jack Irons this week? Call Matt Cameron, you know.
Yeah. Well, Pearl Jam's been pretty fortunate in the fact too, man, that like they're another band much like the Chili Peppers, man, where like suddenly like you look up and they're 35 years into a career and one of the biggest American rock bands out there.
I know, it's amazing. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like even for me, like I've stuck around. I think, you know, I can play like a club, like a small intimate club in almost any city in the world, and it takes a long time to get to that point. You know, like there's still I've always kind of been hidden in plain sight in a way. Not that I want it to be, but it's like a weird, like maybe just
right.
I mean, if you look at my discography, like how many records I've been on and a part of, whether it's songwriting, playing, mixing, engineering, whatever it is, it's actually, I look at it and I can't believe it. It's
crazy.
Like it's almost in the hundreds, you know. And I've just been musically, my life is music since I was a little kid, and been so active since like the early 80s, you know. And you know, so it's some, you know, 40 some years later, like things, you know, there's a catalog out there.
Yeah. Well, that Seattle scene, I've gotten the chance to talk to a couple of people that were around that Seattle scene though, man. And I think everyone kind of expected that just to be like a quote unquote phase, you know, from 90 to 95, you know, Seattle music could do no wrong. Everything that came out of there was deemed genius and amazing. Yeah. And most of it was, and some of the greatest lead singers in rock emerged from there, or whatever. But being around that scene, was Seattle always producing brilliant musicians, or did the microscope just happen to, you know, land there around that time? I imagine this was no accident. There must have been great artists around Seattle for years.
Yeah, I think what happens is that there was I think there's great concentration of musicians in many other cities too.
Yeah.
And it very often has to do with it you having to create your own thing, because you're kind of removed from or away from the obvious focus, which would have been New York, London, LA, you know, and places where people go on purpose to try to, like, you know, access you know, other like-minded musicians and this other stuff. But you know, it's funny because I've traveled to so many different parts of the world, and this, everywhere you go, you know, throughout the years, I realized there's these concentrations of, and I was the same way, because I was living in Mexico City as a kid, you know, when I moved to the States at 12, and I remember from like 10 on already looking at, I was playing, you know, electric guitar already, and quite good for my age. I was definitely more like a, you know, like an 18-year-old at 12 and 10. It's like, I gotta get over to the States, you know. I gotta get over to the States. And my aunt Frank lived in Laurel Canyon. You know, she was born in London, and so I was just like, okay, there's my chance. I'm gonna invite myself over for the summer, and then just kind of stay, you know. And that's, I remember like barely speaking like a few words of English, and meeting Jack Irons at homeroom, like. He walked past me wearing a Gene Simmons outfit, because they were Kiss in the talent show. Yeah. And I don't know why, I just looked at his codpiece and I thought to myself, is that protective? So I kind of did a test punch, And he's like, "Ow, you asshole!" And then I told Hillel, he goes, "What does this guy look like?" And then Hillel goes, "Oh, that dude's a great guitar player. I just heard him play the other day. We should ask him to be in the band.
Yeah. And
We should
thus,
ask him to jam with him." Yeah,
and thus the relationship is born from a sack shot.
yeah, sack shot, like, which is so unlike me anyway. It's like, I don't know why. Yeah.
And so let me ask you this, because the music industry has changed so much and the physical product isn't as prevalent as it used to be, and bands are really out there having to tour and having to sell merchandise. And it's I imagine it's probably always been a difficult road, but now it's very difficult. And you really have to do music nowadays because you love it, because it's hard to be very, 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 very lucrative at it. But it seemed like we could kind of see streaming coming on down the pike. You know what I mean? At some point, we knew we were going to get to this point. Is there anything the industry could have done, or record labels, or anything where they could have made it more profitable for the artist?
I mean, even from the beginning, you would get a record deal, and then you would pay back that record deal from your points. So 15%. So they were already keeping a bunch of. Obviously, they took great risks, and the budgets were because stuff was expensive. Studios were minimum $1,500 a day, right? Plus all the stuff. And videos for $100,000. I mean, I was around for some of that, and I think that at some point it was inevitable, only because it stopped being physical, So and then now, like, there was a whole generation that started to, like, the sharing of MP3s and the sharing of software. Remember the early days?
Yeah. Yep.
And so it became like this fun thing that you could do, the power you could have by having things. And then it just became difficult. The problem is, I still don't understand the math of, like, 600 million Spotify users. Spending $10 minimum, right, or whatever, or I don't know how many it is, but it's many millions. And then 0.0042 per play of your song.
Yeah.
So say, for example, 900,000 plays of my album Hum ended up being like $3,000 to split with a label. Now it's better than a kick in the pants, but it's not going to make it so that, I mean, most people that I know are it's the touring, it's the merch and the vinyl selling and the touring. Every time I play a show, I'm always hanging out after for an hour and a half or two, talking to the fans, sitting there, signing their vinyl. I mean, I like the guy from the head of the Spotify was like, you just make more records, that's his answer. Or he said something like, oh, records don't cost anything to make these days. I'm like, really?
But then there's a flip side of that, though, because then you look into, like, oversaturation, and then people are sick of you. You can't do it too much. You can't go to the well too many times.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, but the thing is, like, look, there's always some kind of solution. Like I love Bandcamp. Like, I myself consume Bandcamp, meaning, like, I have my Bandcamp app, and I have a few hundred records that I've purchased.
Yeah.
And if it's $10, I'll pay $20. I'm like, you can add extra.
Right.
All the jazz stuff that I like, all the kind of, like, electronica, all the kind of avant-garde stuff. It's like, I like to have, but it also makes it difficult because they send you a FLAC of the stuff you bought. And most people can't figure out how to download the FLAC and stick it into your iTunes library.
Right.
Like, okay, really? You're into technology? You can't even figure that out,
Right.
But people just, it's just crazy. I have Spotify, I have Tidal, Prime, YouTube Pro. I mean, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing with all this stuff, but it's just, I'm also a consumer. I'm just like, oh, they don't have this. Oh, they have it here, And I'm just curious, and like, part of me is adapted to the modern way of looking at. I look at my phone way too much,
It's a shame, though. It is a shame. I mean, it is a shame, because you look at these artists, and I have them on the podcast, and they'll pop up on the screen, and I'll forget sometimes, and I'll say, wow, I've been listening to this person for damn near my whole life, man. And I guess, it's me being the naive, but you think because you've been listening to them and seeing them for so long, that somehow, man, that they've got the kind of money where they're very comfortable, and often it's not the story.
Well, what's funny for me is, like, because so I basically, just to be completely honest, it's like I live month to month, right? And some months I do better than others, or whatever. But if you do, this is what really freaks me out. If you do ALAIN JOHANNES net worth, right, it comes up with 9 million. Now, I don't think I've earned 2 million total in my entire life since since my Baskin Robbins.
Yeah. Where's the other
275
seven?
an hour.
Where's the other seven? We got to find Alan's other 7 million.
I'm thinking, can I sue them for affirmation of character? Like, I'm gonna sue you for 9 million because that's I don't know. But I don't know how they calculate this stuff. They probably like every record that I've ever worked on, and thinking that we keep all this money. Yeah, and now, you know, just to one last thing on Spotify. Now they're whoever gets 1,000 streams or less doesn't even get their money. So that ends up being, I don't know how much sitting around, floating around. It's just really unfair. And I think that the bigger artists, you know, like there's not going to be a community of like, you know, like a union concept of like artists looking out for each other, because the person that gets 20 million streams, 40 million streams is still making dozens of tens of thousands or whatever a month, and that's you know, that's enough. That's a very comfortable living, and so they're not going to rock the boat. I don't know. The whole thing is just, it's confusing to me. But you know what? I felt blessed the first day that someone gave me a sandwich for playing guitar.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right. Yeah.
Like I still can't believe I got away with it. Like I got to do what I love, you know, and I get to do what I love, and somehow the bills sometimes get paid. You know, it's I mean, you know, I was smart. Obviously, I was just like very young. I started to learn about recording, and I was like, I should just pick up on a couple of these things that are kind of like, you know, adjacent to being in a band. You know, that still I can be around, especially to my experiences, my many decades of experience of making records and being around amazing people. Like when I work with a young band, I can help them make the record, get closer to the record they really want to make.
Right.
I don't tell them what to do and how to do it. I simply kind of like help them organize themselves and kind of like point at things. I'll suggest things here and there, but I'm never going to enforce anything. And I don't really have a sound per se, you know?
Does it scratch a different creative itch though, man? Like when you make a great record as a performer, as opposed to engineering or mixing a great record for somebody else and having it turn out absolutely fucking amazing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like what's the dichotomy like there?
I mean, it's funny because I still feel proud, regardless of it, you know? In a way, it's almost like it's a little easier to feel good about like the records that I've helped people make, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas my own records, I just look at it as a kind of like a marker for my process and where I am right now.
Right.
You know, but I can still listen to. I'm not one of these people like I can't listen to my own music. You know, like I'm basically Natasha and I used to write songs so we could hear something that we're missing in the world. You know,
right?
Like as a fan, what are you missing? Well, I wish it had this thing that kind of was between Stevie and the Beatles and a bit of Zeppelin. You know.
Right.
And
fuck it. I'm gonna make it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm gonna make it. It's you know, it's like why not? It's like and you know, and the whole thing with like you know, being autonomous and learning how to you know, going into engineering and producing, I was just like, this dude fucked up my shit. I can fuck it up just as good as he did. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And at least it'll be exactly the way I wanted it to be. You know. So. It's pretty funny.
Now, another interesting guy that I'm talking to right now, because you know, sometimes I got to lay the groundwork for these interviews, and they're cultivated over days or weeks or whatever. Me and you had talked for a couple weeks, you know what I mean, about getting the scheduling right or whatever. Yeah. One guy that I'm talking to right now who said to say hi to you is Ray Vale from Slow Burn Drifters.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I'm really digging what he does, man. You know what I mean? I'm very much in that Mark Lanegan vein, you know?
Yeah, super talented, and this girl too. Like, we've worked together for a few years here and there, you know, and it's been an amazing experience. And he does, even speaking to him on the phone, it's got this kind of like, you know, the gravelly voice and
we're gonna talk tomorrow. Yeah,
great, awesome.
Well, because you know, a lot of times super interesting people, you know, like that, like, and I think that don't necessarily get on and do a lot of these. I think sometimes there is, and rightfully so, a little bit of trepidation of wanting to see if there's a type of chemistry and maybe have a chat beforehand before coming on and actually recording something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I've kind of always trusted, you know. I mean, you can adjust in the moment, of course. You know, so there's some chemistries, but you know, better than others. But you know, I mean, whoever, passionate is passionate. So
Right.
if somebody is wanting to communicate, and with someone and find out about processes and stories and histories, I'm always down for that. It's especially like the way that it's very organically connecting these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like reaching, someone reaches out to me, that means they're interested and they want, it's
Yeah.
not like I'm showing up at a radio station because somebody said, oh, and you walk in and like they're like, who's this guy again? And
Right.
it's not their idea. They got pushed into it.
Right.
I mean, I don't. You can still get some kind of chemistry going then, but it's just this. You know what? It's funny because I've never solicited. I just kind of like, in terms of bands that I work with, like somehow somebody thinks it's a good idea to reach out to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
then almost always it works out in some form, or will work out in some form, or whatever. Obviously, that there has to be a connection to the music, but it doesn't always have to be like, I have to sense something from the music, and especially commitment and passion.
Right.
It doesn't have to be my favorite,
Right.
As a matter of fact, if it's something that is a little bit out of my comfort zone, it's even more interesting, because where's the universal aspect in this?
Right. Right.
Because every artist has a potential listening audience.
Well, I'm dressed up like a 51-year-old David Lee Roth clone, and I have a podcast called Pod Scum, so I'm definitely off the grid for sure. But I mean, but that doesn't make me any less of a fan right here, man. I have to add integrity and artistic, to my show as well.
Oh, of course, no, of course. I mean,
this is huge for me. I mean, I almost feel like, and I think that's the beauty of artists, man, is that, and there are certainly big egos in the entertainment industry, but for the most part, man, true artists, man, do have like a humbleness to them. You know what I mean? So like, I think they're always a little off put as to why someone would want to talk to me. You know what I mean? But obviously, man, you're somebody with a lot of talent, and you're somebody with an incredible discography and resume. So I mean, I think people are certainly interested, to hear what super talented people have to say.
Oh, awesome! I mean, I think like.
And especially to pick your brain on stuff like that, you know what I mean? Musicians out there that might be starting their own career and want to hear how you construct a song, or what you do in the studio, or like, your feelings on your takes on this and that, or whatever, man. I think it's useful, because I think it's got to be tough being a young musician and navigating nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it's amazing how I see this amazing talent pool coming up, and it's a slightly different focus, like maybe there's a lot of history behind us, and there's a lot of examples that are readily available, and so in a way kind of see a little bit of shortcut possibilities. I know that when somebody picks up a guitar today, as opposed to 30, 40 years ago, electric guitar, rock guitar, or whatever, it's like everything's so much, the lessons and the thing and the examples and we were kind of like trying to figure out, like, what are they doing and where can I see them live? And, it was a little bit less immediate, but at the same time, it's like, I think humanity, will always be creative. There's even creativity in some of the usage of like technologies coming up. But the only thing I'm afraid of is well, it's kind of a crazy time anyway, in terms of like the world's in tremendous chaos or whatever. But I got a feeling that there's going to be a renaissance of like people wanting to experience the beauty of the creative aspects of humanity, and just seeing people do things, or reading their mind, or seeing theater or live performances, of any kind. It's gotta kind of like, because it's been such food for the soul my entire life, reading poetry, like great novels, watching music from all kinds of cultures and and genres, and that's going to be continuing to be inspiring.
That will make a resurgence. Yeah, we
Yeah.
will see great poets and we will see great composers and stuff again. It'll
Yeah,
happen.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course. I mean, this, of course, it's on a much grander scale, but there's been many cycles like this beforehand, and the whole advent of recorded music and the possibility of artists being more than from their own art. It used to be the church, right? The church,
Right.
The church, or the royalty had their, the court composer, or the teacher to the prince and whatever. That was kind of like the way the people that were, for sure. But that, what about before that? The music was tied into like ritual and this kind of like the best or the most connected we could get to nature or the divine was always through music or song, rhythm, singing, etc. So I think it's always going to be around, as long as we're around as humans.
So the last album was, before I let you out of here, for fans who will want an update, man. So 2020 Hum comes out. When should we expect new music? You were talking about a solo album. Should we expect anything new from ALAIN JOHANNES in 2025?
Absolutely, it's coming.
Okay.
I'm going to record it very soon. Two things. One is my follow-up to my second solo record, which is called Fragments and Holes Volume 1. Okay. So Volume 2 is coming, and that's based on the simple premise of taking things that I've improvised or spontaneously kind of came up with on Instagram, and then expanding them into songs, and that's going to be a record. And then the trio, finally, getting this started since 2019 with my trio with Cote and Philip Fonseca, the ALAIN JOHANNES trio. Where we did a song called Luna and Sol with Mike Patton as our guest. We're going to finish that record. And some of it's going to be in Spanish, which I never sung in Spanish before or wrote a Spanish lyric until that song, and some in English. And I'm very excited about that because I'm really proud of my trio, which started as a way to play some of the 11 music and my solo music, but it's turned into its own thing,
And what's the connection with Mike Patton? Your stuff is out on Ipecac?
Well, no, he actually sings. He's a guest singer on our single, the ALAIN JOHANNES Trio first single that came out a few years ago. And yes, of course, he's a label president.
Yeah.
He's Ipecac, and he put out Spark actually back in 2010, my record for Natasha. And they put out Hum most recently. So
yeah, he's awesome too. He's a super
amazing
too. Yeah, he's
amazing. I love Mike. He's a genius, and he's a badass,
And so the best place to follow what you're doing, because I know nowadays everybody's got to be out on the platforms. The business has become so much about your fucking profile out there and where people can find you. Where's the best way to stay tapped in with you? With the
I think
it's
Instagram because I have the website. I have the ALAINJOHANNES.eu.com, but my Instagram is at ALAIN JOHANNES. I've been literally on there since 2011, since the very beginning, and I post so much. I post my little jams all the time, some great photos from the past, some videos. I have a few thousand posts already, and I've been building it up slowly. I'm up to like 66,000, something like that, fans, and they're really committed, and it's a nice place. Like there's zero toxicity there, like people, there's no like a bunch of like nasty trolling or comments. Some have been very lucky. I set a certain tone and everyone's respectful of it. So yeah, it's a nice place to enjoy the history. I post photos of us growing up with the Flea and Hillel, and then Natasha and I, and like stuff with Chris and yeah, it's my little social media happy place there. So.
Well, listen, almost 90 minutes with you, man, plus, man. So this has been a real pleasure and a real honor for me, man. I appreciate you doing it. I'm glad now we're in touch, man. Hopefully we can do this again.
I'd love to. All right.
Yeah.
I'll make sure to do a bunch of exciting stuff so we have more to talk about.
Listen, Alan, this has been a real honor, man. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, brother.
It's been a pleasure getting the chance to meet and talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you, man. To be continued then. Yeah.
Yeah. Good talking to you,
Awesome.
sir.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
There he goes, folks. What a conversation, man. The multi-instrumentalist, producer, engineer, mixer, guitarist, bass player. I don't even want to go into the amount of instruments that this guy plays. Like I said at the top of the interview, I had to look some of them up to see if they were even real fucking things. Me, 51 years into my existence, didn't know what a theremin was or a sig fiddle or a marxophone. You hand this guy an instrument, he's fucking playing it, probably proficiently, and then handing it back to you and saying, now you do something with it. Seriously, one of the most talented guys in the music industry, man, the great ALAIN JOHANNES. What a pleasure getting the chance to talk with him all the way over in Chile. Living the good life, I would imagine. At least I hope he is, man. Has given us such great music. His last solo album was Hum that came out in 2020. Good news is we will get more music from him. Played and just did a lot of stuff with Mark Lanegan, Queens of the Stone Age, them Crooked Vultures, a project with Dave Grohl, Josh Homme, and Led Zeppelin's own John Paul Jones. Has worked with PJ Harvey. The list here, should you want it, is staggering. Among others, Thelonious Monster, No Doubt, Live, Mark Lanegan, Eagles of Death Metal, Millionaire, Silverchair, Pussifer, Gutter Twins, Kelly Clarkson, Hillary Duff, Jimmy Eat World, Arctic Monkeys. Did I say Chris Cornell? I'm going to say Chris Cornell again because he deserves to be mentioned anywhere fucking twice. And I'm going to mention Mark Lanegan again because hearing any Mark Lanegan stories and picking his brain about Mark Lanegan made me very giddy and happy. Everybody knows that I'm a huge Mark Lanegan guy. And just to get Alan's take on everything concerning music and the music business is a real treat, man. If you don't know who ALAIN JOHANNES is, please, I implore you to go check out, just do a deep dive on him. Check out his solo work, his work with his late wife, Natasha, with 11, just all kinds of stuff. And if you do a really deep dive, you'll find him on albums that you may have listened to or not even known he was on or a part of. Behind the scenes, writing, producing, playing on, being part of people's bands, just dipping his toe into a lot of creatively amazing projects, man. And his own music with ALAIN JOHANNES, the ALAIN JOHANNES Trio. Just go do a deep dive, do your fucking homework, and you will come back and say, Rexx, gratis for turning me on to ALAIN JOHANNES. I do firmly believe that. So big honor for me to have him on here tonight, man, and to be able to chop it up with him, man. So thank you so much, ALAIN JOHANNES. This was an early Christmas gift to me. So a huge pleasure, man. Hope you guys dug that episode, man. Make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook. Reach out. Tell me who you like to see on here, who you don't like to see, who you'd like to see me get. I'll try to run them down for you. Always interactive on here, man. So reach out. And, of course, if you're on this channel, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell somewhere up there in the ether, floating at the top of your screen somewhere, man. This is where you got to stay tapped in, man. I'm going to give myself one more look just to make sure that the Roth quaff is still in order. I can't get a bad view. Maybe it's the mirror. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's both. But still, looking amazing. 90 minutes with ALAIN JOHANNES and looking better than ever, man. Hey, I hate to toot my own horn, but beep, beep. Big ups to ALAIN JOHANNES. Thank you once again. Hope you guys dug that episode. And like I always say when I end these things, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.